when Deathworlder Cadets ended a century-long alien siege scenario in 20 minutes. Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously as she observed the latest batch of exchange cadets entering the Galactic Defense Academy's most prestigious simulation chamber. The Xerian siege had been the Academy's ultimate test for over a century, a complex strategic scenario that typically took even the brightest alien minds weeks to solve, if they solved it at all. The scenario was based on a real historical event, the Siege of Xerian Prime, where the hegemony's forces had held a critical fortress world for 18 months before finally achieving victory through careful resource management and diplomatic maneuvering. It was considered the gold standard of civilized warfare, minimal casualties, maximum strategic thinking. Initiating Xerian Siege Protocol, the AI announced as the chamber filled with holographic displays. Cadet Team Designation, Terra 7. Commander Zephyr, the Academy's chief tactical instructor, leaned toward Admiral Kethvar. Are you certain about allowing the human cadets to attempt this simulation? The psychological profiles suggest they may not be compatible with our strategic methodologies. Kethvar's compound eyes focused on the 5 human cadets as they surveyed their situation. Team leader Sarah Martinez, demolitions expert Jake Thompson, communications specialist Lisa Chin, medic David Rodriguez, and engineer Alex Petrov, all of them products of Earth, the infamous Deathworld, that had recently joined the Galactic Federation. The simulation parameters are unchanged, the AI continued. You are the commanding officers of a besieged fortress world. Enemy forces outnumber you 10-1. Civilian population, 2.3 million. Available resources are limited. Standard victory conditions apply. Maintain control of the planet for the duration of the siege while minimizing casualties. The alien observers settled in for what they expected to be a lengthy strategic exercise. The record completion time was held by a brilliant Vortex strategist who had solved it in 4 weeks of careful planning and negotiation. Sarah Martinez stepped forward, studying the tactical display for exactly 37 seconds. Jake, what's our explosive yield capacity? Standard simulation allows for conventional ordnance only, Jake replied, checking his virtual arsenal. Nothing above Class 5 fusion charges. Lisa, communication range to enemy fleet command? Full spectrum available. They're expecting surrender negotiations within the first week. Sarah turned to her team with a smile that would have terrified any alien who understood human facial expressions. Gentlemen, ladies, we're not playing defense. Cadet Martinez, Commander Zephyr interrupted through the comm system. The scenario requires you to hold the fortress world, not. With respect, Commander, Sarah replied. The victory condition states we maintain control of the planet. It doesn't specify how. What happened next would be studied in alien military academies for generations. Instead of fortifying their positions and preparing for a long siege, the human cadets immediately launched every available ship in a coordinated strike against the enemy fleet. While Jake's demolitions teams prepared massive explosive charges, Alex began retrofitting civilian transport vessels into improvised weapons platforms. They're committing suicide, breathed a Nebulan cadet observing from the gallery. No siege force attacks a superior enemy fleet directly. But the humans weren't following conventional siege doctrine. David had identified weak points in the enemy fleet formation by analyzing medical reports, stress fractures in their ships caused by prolonged acceleration. Lisa was simultaneously broadcasting surrender negotiations while feeding false intelligence to enemy commanders. 18 minutes into the simulation, Jake's teams detonated strategic charges that sent several asteroids from the system's belt on collision courses with the enemy fleet. Not to destroy them, but to force them into David's predicted positions. Impossible, whispered Admiral Kethvar as enemy ships began retreating from the asteroid field, only to find themselves in the crosshairs of Alex's weaponized civilian fleet. At exactly 19 minutes and 43 seconds, the enemy admiral accepted unconditional surrender. The simulation chamber fell silent. A century-old scenario that had challenged the greatest military minds in the galaxy had been solved in under 20 minutes by 5 cadets from a backwater death world. How? Commander Zephyre's voice carried a note of genuine bewilderment. Sarah Martinez shrugged. You said we had to maintain control of the planet. The fastest way to do that was to eliminate the threat entirely. Why would we sit in a fortress when we could end the war? But the casualties, the resources, the diplomatic implications. 0 civilian casualties. David interrupted, reading his medical reports. Enemy casualties minimal due to their early surrender. Resource expenditure 30% of available ordnance. War duration 20 minutes instead of 18 months. Admiral Kethvar realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't just solved the scenario, they had exposed a fundamental flaw in galactic military thinking. For a century, the Academy had been teaching cadets to accept siege conditions as inevitable, to manage resources for extended conflict rather than seeking decisive victory. The scenario parameters will need to be updated, she announced weakly. Actually, Sarah said, checking her chrono, we have 40 minutes left in our scheduled simulation time. Could you load up that Siege of Corvain scenario we read about? The one that took your best strategist 2 months to solve? The alien instructors exchanged glances of pure terror. That day marked the beginning of what military historians would later call the Human Doctrine Revolution, a fundamental shift in galactic military strategy that transformed siege warfare from a patient art of attrition into a swift science of decisive action. The Xerian siege scenario was quietly retired the following semester, replaced with simulations that the Academy hoped would be more human-resistant. They were wrong.